Common Gamer here, bringing you another chapter of Truce. Chapter 4. There is no longer any sense in this business. The soldier's life on the Western Front was ruled by noise, the sound of artillery pounding away, the rat-a-tat-tat of machine gun fire, the drone of planes overhead, the shouting of orders. But there were times, especially at night, when a stretch of the trenches might take a break from fighting, and absolute silence followed. During the rare moments of quiet, most of the men tried to relax and possibly catch up on their sleep. Those sailing on duty soon discovered something amazing. They could hear the enemy in their trenches. Bits of conversations and bursts of laughter drift across no man's land. The sound of musical instruments and singing might be heard. These incidental conflicts with the enemy made each side curious. They had been indeed entertained to fight, in part because they had led to believe the enemy was inferior to them or a mindless monster. What they were now hearing might be a different language from theirs, but the sounds were still very familiar. The Icarus was often confirmed by those going out on night patrols, and a letter to his wife in England, Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Fisher Roche, reported that his friend Jimmy went out last night and says he could hear the Huns sloshing about in their trenches and coughing as much as we do. So I expect they are equally uncomfortable. Another British soldier, Rifleman Les Wilton, volunteered that sometimes he and his friends chatted with the enemy. We used to shout remarks at each other, sometimes rude ones, but generally less venom than a couple of London cab drivers after a mild collision. Occasionally the shouting matches even return into friendly musical serenades. A young British private had found memories of those in which he took part. On a quiet night we used to sing to each other, sometimes alternate verses of the same tune. They often sang their own words to the tune of God Save the King. In some areas of the front lines, more than just songs were shared. We were so close, 17-year-old Albert Morome noted in a letter to his parents in London. We threw tons of belly beef over to them, or jam, or biscuits, and they threw things back. It wasn't done regularly, just on occasion sort of thing. These friendly exchanges between enemies worried the commanding officers a great deal. English General Horace Smith Dorrien wrote in his diary on December 2nd, worried stories in from the trenches about vandalizing with the Germans. They shout at each other and offer to exchange certain articles and give certain information. In one place, by argument, a bottle was put out between the trenches, and then they held a competition to see which side could break it first. The notion of the troops getting along with the enemy so worried and annoyed Smith-Darren that he decided to put a stop to it. I therefore intend to issue instructions to my corps not to fraternize in any way whatsoever with the enemy for fear one day they may be lured into such a state of confidence as to be caught off guard and rushed. Lower-ranking officers replied to these new instructions. One British private recalled that often while singing to the enemy an officer of one side or the other would come up and stop the singing by ordering a few rounds of fire. We used to be supporting and fire high with the first round, and so did Brother Butch. The truth was that something deeper was at work on the men. The more friendly contact they had with the enemy, the less anger they felt towards them. After describing in detail how neighborly the enemy across from him was, German Captain Rudolf Bingding concluded in his diary entry with, "Truly there is no longer any sense in this business." But most high-ranking officers felt the business of war had to go on, because fresh troops and ammunition began to arrive as winter came on. The British High Command decided to put a complete end to frustration by launching a series of large-scale raids. The first of these took place on December 14th at something in France, and moved nearly 2,000 men. Captain Billy Covered watched from a nearby hill as the hastily trooped up and ill-prepared attack took place. Imagine sending soldiers to attack a strongly wired up a hill in mud a foot deep under fertile and side fire. It was a regular valley of death. The attack nearly failed. We had about 400 casualties. It is most depressing. Yet a week later, Congreve saw a newspaper report in which his commanders lied about the raid, boasting that it had been a complete success. His blood-boiling career noted angrily a beautiful success for those poor boys who went little by then to German High Command riddled with a standard raid on British troops along the French and Belgian border near the North Sea. This battle lasted 4 days with thousands of casualties on both sides. More larger-scale and futile attacks were made over the following wounded. These raids might have given an indication that Christmas was approaching. The rules and civilians back home wanted the men in from the lines to have some sort of Christmas cheer, and sent thousands upon thousands of carefully prepared gift boxes to the battlefield. As the fighting stopped, British Major G.D. Jeffreys grumped that everything seemed hung up just now for all the Christmas specials, which were becoming a positive nuisance. Our enemy thinks of war and nothing else. Well, we must mix it up with plum puddings. Jeffrey had no way of knowing it. Of course, the enemy was just as distracted by Christmas. His German counterpart, Captain Rudolf Binding, complained that if I had my way, some person in authority would proclaim that Christmas will not be celebrated this year. Enemy death and a Christmas tree, they could not live so close together. The soldiers, however, were ready for Christmas and a break from random death. The packages from home were opened eagerly, and puddings and sausages, pipes and tobacco, and other small gifts were shared with comrades. In addition to their holiday parcels, German soldiers received thousands of small pine trees decorated with candles. As the spirit of the approaching holiday took hold, both sides began to sing Christmas carols during the nightly skirting days. Generally, the tensions and anger of soldiers gave way to more peaceful thoughts. German Karl Adlig wrote to his parents, "We were relieved on the evening of the 23rd. About 10 o'clock, the English had been singing hymns, including some by a fine cotelet on our side, too. The beautiful songs returned with only now and then a short in-between. Since the beginning of the war, the weather had been unusually warm and wet, but on December 24th the temperatures dropped suddenly and a light snow fell. That certainly gave the area around the trenches more of a look and feel of Christmas, but more importantly, the muddy ground began to freeze solid. For the first time in months, the men could move about in the trenches with relative ease. As the sun began to set on Christmas Eve, the British High Command tried once again to keep the men alert, hoping to discourage frustration. A message was sent to all units along the Western Front. It is thought possible that the enemy may be planning an attack during Christmas or New Year. Bustling villages will maintain during this period. The German High Command also warned its soldiers on alert and ready to fight. Just before moving into the trenches that night, Private Hugo Klemm and his comrades were issued a warning. Our company commander emphasized that for the following days, special alertness would be required as it testified that English would perhaps take advantage of our good mood at Christmas by monitoring a raid. That night, all the Western Front, the German soldiers entered the trenches carrying their weapons as well as some items the commanders would have found upon their knowing a young German lieutenant recalled that at darkness we marched forward, like Father Christmas with parcels hanging from us. All was quiet, no shooting, little snow. We posted a tiny Christmas tree in our dugout and placed a second lighted tree on the breastwork. Across the way, British Private Albert Murray glanced at the portal at the trench, towards the German lines. It was a beautiful moonlight. He wrote home. First on the ground, well almost everywhere, and about 7 or 8 in the evening there was a lot of common in the German trenches, and they were these lights. I don't know what they were, and then the Germans sang Silent Night. 5 miles south of Moron, another British soldier, Graham Williams, was on guard duty in a forward trench. I was standing on the fire step, gazing towards the German lines and thinking what a different sort of Christmas Eve this was from any I had experienced in the past. This suddenly lightning began to appear along the German parapet, with eventually making shift Christmas trees azure with light candles which burnt steadily in the still frosty air. Another tree had of course seen the same thing, and quickly awoke those asleep in the shelters to come and see the thing with had come to pass. Williams and the men in his company watched as more trees approached along the enemy battle line. They suddenly approached and began to sing, "Still Notch, Ill Notch." They finished their carol and thought that we ought to retaliate in the same way, so we sang the first Noel. When we finished, they all began clapping, and so it went on. First the Germans would sing one of their carols, and then we sang one of ours, until when we stared up, "Oh, came all ye faithful." The Germans immediately joined in singing the same hymn to the Latin words, "Ecce Fructus," and I thought, well, this will really a most extraordinary thing. Two nations both singing the same carol in the middle of a war. As midnight approached, both sides held religious ceremonies to celebrate the holiday and to remember the fallen comrades. Burns behind the trenches were carried of debris to become makeshift chapels with wooden tables as an altar and candles and dusty wine bottles. A Belgian captain, Robert de Witt, was believed that the Germans did not launch an artillery attack during the evening services. Instead, the Germans set up numerous rocket flares to light up the horizon as joyous boom. Whitty heard the enemy singing carols. He was overcome with emotion. It was unrealizable. The Christmas of long ago were coming to life again. All things had come known in her childhood, the family, the countryside, the fireside of our eyes dazzled by the tree with its sparkling candles. A French officer told about an outdoor service just held 150 feet from the German trenches. Throughout the whole ceremony, the Borchers did not fire a single shot. For an instant, the god of goodwill was once more master of this correction of the earth. In a few places, some remarkable place, soldiers from both sides got out of their trenches and curiously walked into no man's land. Meeting in the middle, they would shake hands, exchange cigars or tins for food, and chat. Despite of its language barriers, a number of those meeting produced promises to continue the peace on Christmas Day. But peace was not on everyone's mind that night. There were still many places along the line where machine gun and rifle fire broke the silence. One English officer wanted to shoot down the Christmas tree that sprinkled on the enemy preparing across from him. I was for not allowing the violators into themselves. The anonymous officer complained, especially like those that killed one of our men that afternoon, but my captain would let me shoot. The peace was indeed a very fatal one. The French officer observed, "It would be so easy to put an end to the scene, one terrible from another." Even as the officer wrote this, a shot rang out. Bang! He couldn't continue. A shot had been fired. On the follow of the bullet, which had torn the air apart and perhaps reached its target, at all once the singing stopped. What a pity! Among German troops, a similar nervous hope existed. One officer wounded. Is it possible? Are the French really going to leave us in peace today? Christmas Eve? Is it our imagination, or is it maybe meant to lure us into a false sense of scenery? Truth We all kept on our guard, as unusually sort of peace had been achieved for the night. But as the soldiers went to sleep, they woke, wondered what Christmas Day would bring. Just in case, they kept their machine guns and rifles at their sides, loaded and ready for action. Please, everyone, remember a veteran, and to go up to them and say thank you for what they did for our freedom. Well, this is Common Gamer signing off. Please comment, rate, and subscribe, and hit the like button.